Hey, Beth.
Hey, Mark.
I'm excited to talk to you because you and I have something very, very, very special in common, and that is donuts.
Yes.
I love donuts. Anyone that knows me knows I love donuts. And you and I somehow connected on the internet around donuts. How
Yes.
did we officially even meet? Like LinkedIn anything? What happened?
Somebody that we are mutually connected to commented on a post of yours about how they wanted to buy you donuts because the CTA on your LinkedIn profile is literally buy me donuts.
Yes.
And so as LinkedIn does, it came up in my feed and I was like, "Oh my god, I have to steal that. How did I not think of using that?" So I commented, and I guess you checked me out. And then we had this like flurry of DMs that night. And you were like, I want to talk to you. And I was like, I want to talk to you too. And it was like, well, let's have our first conversation be this podcast. And I
Yes.
was
Yes. Okay. That's
like,
what it
okay,
was.
sure.
All because of a don't. Okay. Let's
Because
talk.
of donuts.
All because of donuts. Um, Tell me, how do donuts come into your life? What is it about donuts? And again, let people know what you're up to, what you're doing with donuts, because it's really unique. But also, folks, if you're listening to this, go to my LinkedIn profile, click the buy me a donut button, and please somebody send me a donut. I'll send you my address so it can be delivered. Beth, how do donuts come into your life?
So I'm currently co-founder and EVP of Imprint CX. We launched about 2 years ago, but at the beginning of COVID, I was one of those people that lost their job early on, that sort of early wave of panic layoffs. And one of my COVID detours was for all of 2021, I made donuts for a local cafe in Katona, New York.
Actually made donuts?
I made donuts every weekend for an entire year. Yeah.
Are you? So that like happens early in the day, right? Or late at night?
Yes, I would start my prep on Thursday afternoons. I would come in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. I would get the donuts on the floor by 8:30 a.m. I would actually go home, take a shower, come back, and I worked at that same cafe either as a hostess or a waitress from like 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And that's what I did for an entire year.
Oh my gosh. This is, it's hard for me to go into a donut shop and not be like, let me get back there and see I want to see, what's going on back there. So you actually made donuts. Do you eat donuts?
I don't. I mean, not really. I'm a self-taught baker. When my kids were smaller, I did have a side gig baking business out of my home called Beth's Kept Secret.
Stop. That's a great pun.
So
I
the
love that.
premise was because of where I live in Westchester County, you've got a lot of moms who don't cook, who don't bake, but nobody wants to be the mom to bring the supermarket cookies
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
or, thing. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll bake them for you and you pass them off as your own. And that's kept secret. And so I did that for a bunch of years. Um, but funnily enough, I had never made donuts before, but the people that I was working for, they knew that I knew how to bake. And they were like, we want to do this thing and we want you to do them. And I said, I've never made a donut before in my life. And they said, that's okay. We'll have our friend who is a CIA trained pastry chef teach you.
Wow.
And I got a 4-hour crash course in how to make donuts. And they handed me the keys and the rest was history. And now I've actually given away the premise of this week's Donut Friday.
Okay. So I just love donuts for different reasons. You are a baker and you were making donuts after the pandemic or during the pandemic, right?
Yep.
And now the donuts in your life take a different form because now on every Friday on LinkedIn, you publish a Donut Friday. Let folks know, like, what is this? What is Donut Friday?
So I started Donut Friday on a whim. It's now a newsletter that I do every Friday, and it is lessons from my life making donuts / being in the service industry, being in customer experience and employee experience. That's my day job.
Mhm.
and the TV show The Bear. And
Yes.
somehow I tie those three things together, and I just kind of give little snippets on my point of view on customer experience and life, professional life, personal life, and that's what I do.
Okay, so folks listening right now, just find Beth Carawan on LinkedIn, subscribe, get the newsletter. You will not be disappointed. And they're really, I like when people write and you can tell they wrote it and you can tell that it's like just honest, genuine. And in your writing, it really is honest and genuine. The lessons that you share are very kind of vulnerable. They're kind of open and honest, which everybody should appreciate in an age where we can just say whatever we want and nobody fact checks that. But your life in this work has really been unique, right? Like again, you talked about how you started in corporate America, after the pandemic, you were making donuts. Now you're co-founder and an executive vice president at Imprint CX. You're helping companies define and kind of bring to life their customer experience. And when we think about the experience of customers, whether it be through services and or products, these experiences sometimes they transcend the dollar amount of a product. They transcend any pain or challenge or impediment we might have to buying a product, because nowadays the experience is really what matters, I think, for a lot of consumers. I think customer behavior, consumer behavior has changed dramatically. Let's just like rip it off and just start talking about that. Explain to people again, for my people that listen, there's a lot of different types of people listen. Let's define customer experience. Let's talk about what it is, how we curate it, and why it's important.
So, customer experience is basically any single touch point that a customer has with a company, whether that's before they buy your product, while they're buying your product, while they're using your product, what they're doing after they use your product, the entire life cycle, how they talk about your product. All of that encompasses customer experience. And there's some people who would probably say, well, actually, some of that is marketing, some of that is product development, some of that is operations, some of that is sales. That is true. But think of customer experience as the overarching umbrella that really pulls all of those pieces together. And the reason why it's important is that if customers have a bad experience with your product or your service, I forget the exact statistic, but they're like 5 or 6 more times more likely to complain about a product than they are to say something nice about a product. I forget the exact statistic.
Mhm.
But and so what I like about what I'm doing now is, and I said this to you at the beginning, is for 25 years in corporate life, my job was to convince people to buy shit they don't need. Like nobody in the world, like, I, please, no disrespect to my old clients at Mars, but nobody in the world needs to buy another bag of M&Ms. Like the people at Mars would like you to.
Mhm.
That was my job, was to figure out when you walked into a Target, when you walked into a Walmart, when you walked into a 7-Eleven, how was I going to convince you to buy more M&Ms? Now it's about the customer, it's not about the product. So what kind of experience does Target want their shoppers to have? Does Walmart have their shoppers to have? Does a SaaS company want their B2B customers have with their products? Even something like a global business services group within a large international company who's responsible for IT and HR and finance, their coworkers are their customers. What's that experience like? So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. Beautiful explanation. And I'm just made me think of this thing. This guy posted literally Kieran Flanagan, former, here it is right here. The best marketing. Oh, now it went away. The best marketing doesn't sell features or benefit. It sells the better you. Uber, not rides, but never lost, never late. Airbnb, not rooms, but belong anywhere confidence. Dropbox, not storage, but never lose a file again. So we're telling stories, we're curating experiences for people. And M&M's is a great example. My mom collects M&M paraphernalia. That's her shtick. That's what Mama Hands does. And when I look at a bag of M&Ms, I have a really different experience than others, right? I look at them and say, "Ooh, Should I buy that for my mom? Is there a thing that comes with it? When I look at the displays that they come in, those cardboard displays, I'm like, I'm going to
Yeah.
steal that. When they throw it away, I'm going to steal it from the back of Target. I'm going to go steal it for my mom. And also, there's a tie in here, which is if people aren't aware that everything they see, touch, taste, smell, or hear has been designed for a very specific outcome, maybe it means the designers and the experience designers are doing a great job. And maybe it means that the consumer's just not aware. And either way, I don't know if that's an exclusively bad thing. But everything, the reason we buy company A or product A versus B, it's because of the marketing and the brand and the experience that it creates, the way that it makes you feel when you're not aware that you're feeling it, right? When I go to a mom and pop donut shop out in the suburbs, if I drive out to the suburbs, it's a very different experience than going to a bougie boutique donut shop in the West Loop here in the city, right? And so it's that experience. My wife always says, all I try to do is make every day special by creating experiences for our kids and our family. And experiences are, to me, what are really, really important. We were talking about the Grateful Dead earlier, right? And about how there's this experience. Like the music itself is just one element of it.
Yeah.
There's these experiences. So, how do you help? What does it mean to help a company or to help people think about their customer experience? What is that? What does the work look like?
So the work can be anywhere from, first of all, companies will say, we need to go and survey our customers because we don't know what they're thinking. And so one of the things that we'll say to them is, no, you probably have more data than you think you realize.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who started their career in market research, I'm actually somebody who's like, less research is better. Customers are getting survey slapped all over the place, myself included, and it's a big pet peeve of mine. So it could be helping companies understand who their customers are, what kind of information do they have about them already, um, helping them understand where those pain points are in the customer journey, and where the gaps are between what the customers say is important and what the employees say is important. Sometimes you find out some really interesting insights there. We worked with a beauty subscription company, and they knew that they had some issues with delivery. But everybody in the company was convinced that was their number one problem, was late delivery.
Okay.
And so we worked with them and we did some journey mapping exercises and we talked to their customers and prospective customers. And actually, yeah, that was problematic. But the biggest problem is that they weren't delivering on their promise, which was a wide variety of different products and shades and colors every month. So customers weren't satisfied. It was like, you promised me this goodie bag or this box of different types of makeup, different types of skincare in different shades, different colors. And for the past 3 months, I've gotten a mascara every single month. I don't need more mascara. You promised me like this surprise and delight and variety, and you're not delivering against that. And that was a bigger issue than the product itself being late.
Interesting. So what people perceive, part of this customer experience is like talking to people, learning, or just seeing where the data is telling you. We always say companies are data rich but insight poor. So coming up with these insights, what are people actually saying versus what we are thinking?
Absolutely. And that's another reason why there is so much data out there, and I like what you said, data rich, insights poor, and it's my job to figure out what those insights are and what is that data telling you. And how do you mine it to the best of your ability? How do you use it correctly to fix those pain points? How do you use it correctly to redesign the customer journey? How do you use it correctly to find out, who are your high value customers versus those customers that just come in and out, once a year? And so it's really interesting. It's a lot of fun. And I like it because it's about human behavior,
Yeah.
really, basically. At the end of the day, it's about understanding human behavior and what drives human behavior. And from where I'm sitting and coming into customer experience, sort of from a 90-degree angle of where I've been for the past 25 years, I think that there are some commonly held tropes, myths about customer experience, how it works, how you're supposed to do it well, where I'm like, we are humans designing experiences for other humans. So before we get to the data, before we get to the dollars, can we remember that these customers are not this faceless mass of people, but it's Mark who is having difficulty reading your cable bill on the mobile app.
Mhm.
You are Mark who wants to cancel a subscription and you're caught in this endless AI chat loop because you can't actually reach a human being because someone somewhere decided it was more economical for them as a company.
Phone tree, right? Yeah, no.
No,
I've
you're
lost cell phones because of that. I'm like, person, let me talk to a person, and then I'll just get angry and I'll throw it. These experiences we talk about are digital, they're in person, they're online, they come through email, text, all these different ways. To you, when you think about, and again, I'm just going to leave this open, but what are some examples of just great customer experiences that you've either designed or that you've witnessed as a customer?
so it's the one that's the easiest for me to go back to, but it's working in the service industry.
Mm,
It is what I loved about working in the service industry is that you know immediately if somebody is having a good experience or a bad experience. And in that moment, you have an opportunity to fix it. And it is immediate as a job, which I don't think a lot of us get professionally this
oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
these days. For those of us who sit in offices and talk about this and talk about it very theoretically and design experiences and comb through data, working in the service industry reminded me of this immediate gratification of I made a difference in somebody's day. They had a good time, and I can feel good knowing that I had something to do with that.
Okay, so this is huge, right? I when I was a kid, I always say in my neighborhood growing up, if you were quarterback of the football team or you worked at Hot Dog Island, you were equally level cool. And I was not the quarterback. So all I ever wanted to do was work the counter at Hot Dog Island and take those coveted stainless steel tongs and just dress and wrap hot dogs. That's all I wanted to do as a kid. And I got to do that. There's a longer story there, but I worked at a hot dog joint here in Chicago. For 15, 20 years. It was my favorite job. And the experience that you're able to provide, and I think you said it, it's the immediacy of, I can tell that person that's third back in line, they're about to be a shit show, right? They're having a bad day. I see them checking their watch. They're looking around. As soon as they come up, my first interaction, because they're not happy, is how do I de-escalate the situation? What can I do to make this the best lunch of their life? That
Mhm.
immediacy is easier to accommodate for than on the digital side of things where it is faceless. It's just data. That's tricky, right?
Yeah, it's data. There's, cross functional teams that everybody has to align upon. There's senior leadership support that you need to get to weigh in on. There's budgets that you need to ask for in order to fix things or to institute things. You've got senior management who has to believe that customer experience is important to begin with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Corporate level. But working in the service industry, it's immediate gratification. And I worked in a Mexican restaurant in Georgetown in Washington D.C. in the 90s in college. Best job I ever had. And I always said that if I could have figured out a way to do that as my job, I would. And so when I lost my corporate job at the beginning of COVID and I had an opportunity to go back to the service industry, my friends and family are like, why are you going back into a restaurant? This is the weirdest, most awful time for you to go back to, but I needed a job. I needed to do something to keep myself busy. And the opportunity presented itself. And I loved every single minute of it. And as a matter of fact, I was still working for this couple. They own a different restaurant now.
Mhm.
I was still working for them up until this past December.
Wow.
I kept doing it.
So, because you've had this experience of working in the service industry where you can see the outcome of a great positive customer experience firsthand, that then allows you to have the understanding of what this looks like. So you can then go theoretically help design and deliver these things. And it's funny, it's like in my head, I'm thinking about like, it's probably hard to write a book about swimming if you've never swam before, right? If you've never felt what it's like to be in the pool and how to jump in and all the sensations, if you've never experienced the experience, it's hard to design a great experience.
Hmm.
My folks own small business in the city. They have, it's generational in our family. And one of the things my dad said is when I was younger, I wanted to have my own hot dog place. Like when I was in college, my dad was like, "What do you think you want to do? You got to start making this." I'm like, I really think I want to open my own place, Dad. I'm like, I know this business inside and out. Like I'm happy there. Like this, I think I want to open my own hot dog joint. And he gave me great advice. My father said, make your mistakes on somebody else's dime so you don't have to make it on yours. Meaning learn everything you can about the experience of doing a thing before you try it on your own. So know what works, know what doesn't, know everything you need to know about running that business. So when you go to try to do it on your own, you know the playbook. And I feel like the same is probably true with what we're talking about is you can't create great customer experience if you don't even know what it is.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that I have with a lot of the gurus, thought leaders, people who speak a lot in the customer experience space. I feel a little bit of a twinge inside of me, and I kind of want to call them out of like, when's the last time you actually did this for
Yeah.
somebody else? Didn't just talk about it, didn't just design it, but that you actually were in service of somebody else. And it's funny that you talk about wanting to open up a hot dog stand and that your dad said learn on somebody else's dime. That was one of the things that I loved about making donuts. For me, it was a dream come true to be thought of as a professional baker, but I didn't have to worry about the business part of it at all. That was
Interesting.
not my job. That was not my responsibility. My responsibility was to make the donuts and to come up with the flavors and to deliver every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning by 8:30 when we opened. That was it. That's all I had to think about.
I call that show up and blow up. Just show up and just blow it up, man. Do your thing and blow it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think the best way to say this because we've talked about a few things. And when we think about experience, we talked about the Grateful Dead, right? There's a whole thing going on there. We talked about the experience of going to a bakery and working at a bakery and the joy. Yeah, maybe people get baked goods if there's like I'm Jewish and when people die they have a shiva and you go and there's always
Mhm.
there's a cookie tray, right? So it's like I might
With
be coming to the bakery to pick up cookies because someone died. I won't be so happy. But most of the time people are coming in. This is a joyful thing.
yes. Nobody is unhappy. Well, again, Shiva aside, no one is unhappy when you give them a cookie.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's joy to be had. And I think about so like as we think about these experiences, we think about the things that we've done, right? I literally was just speaking with somebody before you. We talked about their career path and what she had done, and she had all these. She sold cemetery plots. She sold appliances. I mean, she did this all, but all of those things got her to a place where now what she's doing, it all makes sense. It's all come together, and it's beautifully the dots. Steve Jobs used to say, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And I think about maybe it's like folks like you and I who desire, have experienced, and find supreme value in experiences, right? Not just a product. Like here, remember this? Okay, so folks that are just listening, not watching, this is the first generation of the Apple iPod, right? When this came out, yeah, it looked cool. And yeah, you wanted one because it looked cool. But the experience was not just that it looked cool and you had it. It wasn't just the experience of having 10,000 songs in your pocket and having music on the go. The thing that Apple does well with experience is when you see another Apple product, and you buy one, you're now part of like a club, right?
Mhm.
It's Mac versus PC, if you remember that marketing campaign. And I just think that, like, just as there's people that are great with numbers and spreadsheets and data and projections, because that's where their skills and expertise rely. I think what happens with folks like you and I that are able to experience a great experience and curate a great experience and know what's great and what's not, and then be able to take that learning and translate it for others to then
Mhm.
replicate and curate these great experiences for people. And not everyone can do that, and not everybody even appreciates it, and not everybody is even aware of it.
Well, I think the other part of that too is that you're either naturally empathetic or you're not. So a lot of what that has to do with is empathy.
100%.
And I don't mean empathy in this, very generic sense that gets thrown around now as a buzzword of like putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. I mean truly understanding what it feels like to be a person in that other situation, or at least trying to, or at least asking the right questions so
Mhm.
that you can have a better understanding. um and so service people, I think, by nature are naturally empathetic. Just everybody that I've met across the board are just naturally empathetic people. And I think the people who do customer experience, again, do customer experience design experiences, journey mapping, journey management, all of those things, I think what ties them all together, the people who are really good, is empathy. They are naturally empathetic people.
This is so cool because I wonder if, like, 10, 15, 20 years ago, if you were to talk to people about business and about how we go to market and how we design products, services, I don't know if the word empathy would come up, right? I think it used to be. I gave a presentation a few months ago, and it was around, like, value led selling and product led growth and all these different ways. And the example was like, there's this old, like, 1950s ad. It was like Jif peanut butter. It's like, here's why our peanut butter is better than everybody else's peanut butter. It's just straight product, right? Just like, cool. You want the best product? This is the best product. But then we think about the experience and the community that products can build, the empathy, and why would people want to be part of a community, and how we use that as a lever to help people grow. And you say it, you said it earlier, but it's like, yeah, nobody needs the bag of M&Ms. But I do think people need the experience of cracking open a bag, and like, so I know 100% know what you're saying. But I, on the other side, you're like, you know what? Like, yesterday, my youngest just learned how to ride a two-wheeler, right? A two-wheel bike. He's 5 years old. And the first thing that came to my mind was like, dude, we're going out for ice cream. That's it. We're going out for ice cream.
Yeah,
It wasn't
it's
like,
celebrating.
yeah, and it wasn't like, oh, let's go inside. We got ice cream inside. Different experience. It wasn't, let's go to the store and buy some ice cream. It's like, no, 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 no. We're going to the ice cream shop. We're going to go to that cool place where you can spin the fun wheel and they give you samples and they got it's the whole experience. It was like, we go there for something special, right? Ice cream is ice cream, but it's a different experience. That, to me, those are the moments that create loyalty, that people will open their wallets and buy. People will feel, or on the service side, right? Like, my aunt and uncle, they own a plumbing business, right, out in Pennsylvania. And the service they provide, the way that they provide that service, the experience they present is like, if the shit hits the fan and you got water coming from the second floor to the first floor, you better know that you're going to feel safe when you call Riley, right?
Yeah.
It's the experience. There's the Italian word sprezzature, which is like when everything comes together and the wine is perfect and the pasta's right and the music's right and the sun has set and everything just comes together for this beautiful, perfect meal. That's what I think we want people striving for day in and
And
day out.
that's the ideal, right? But I think that, like a lot of things, like marketing, like sales, like product development, it's become all about the dollar. What is this going to mean for me and my company at the end? How much money is this going to make me? And so that's why I say, when I go back to what I said before about we are humans creating experiences for other humans, and we cannot forget about that. We're going to pause for a second. I'm really sorry, my dog is barking.
Oh, I don't care. You let him bark. I don't care.
Able to hear that?
Yeah, no, I don't care. So this is like Seth Godin, who like I'm a huge Seth Godin fan, but he's like talks about you can't be valuable to 4 million people if you're not valuable to four. And so like the advice there is like if you're in a situation where you have control over your product, your service, your business, if you're designing something, you're starting something, you want to start a newsletter, you want to start a parents group, a book club, you think of the four actual people you know that would find value in what you're trying to do and just get with them and create for them to the point where they're like, this is awesome. I need to tell my other four friends. That's how we grow. That's how we grow. And I've had a few people on the show about like community led growth, and they talk about like the ROI is not immediate, right? Like community led growth is an action that is long term growth. It is not about if you've got deadlines and KPIs and budgets that you got to hit this quarter. Community led growth is not the play. You want to be around. You want to be around for 3, 4, 5 years and longer. Then that's the play.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's not the way most companies work these days. Nobody's patient enough.
We've lost that.
Nobody's patient enough. Everybody wants immediacy. Everybody's looking for the bright. That's the other thing that I rail against all of the time. You'll see me post about it eventually. Is the bright, shiny object. Everybody's looking for the silver bullet that's going to fix every single problem that they have, because they think that there's one metric or one tool or one way to fix everything, and then they're just going to be rolling in dollars. And that's not how human behavior works.
That's true. Yeah, it's I don't want to say things got convoluted, because even if you look back at like the Mad Men era, like there was still big budgets and money being spent. But at the end of the day, businesses are there to do a few key things. And one of those things is they have to make money, right? They got to keep the bills, to pay the bills and keep the lights on. And if they're a public company, they got to hold into the shareholders and the stakeholders to deliver, on their dividend. But you got to think that like somewhere back in the story, there was a person with an idea, there was a pain that they saw, there was a challenge that they saw, that they said, I could make that better for people. And that's how these things start. And then as they grow and as they scale, things get a little bit messy, as they always do.
The humans get lost in the equation. And so, yes, you're right. Companies are there to make money, but there's a way to do it in a more purposefully human way.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what matters to me. That's what really lights me up, is remembering that we are humans and that there are other humans at the other end of what it is that we do. And so you should be able to do both. You can do both. You can treat your employees like humans, right? All of the debates that are happening now about return to office versus hybrid versus remote, and senior leadership is saying, do as I say, not as I do, because they all get to work from home, but you've got to be in the office 3 days a week, right? And it's because they don't treat their employees like humans and they don't trust them to get their work done. And it's a real conflict. And I think that that's pervasive in so many areas of our professional lives right now, that I would really like us just overall to get back to being in a more human place. And so that's where this crazy idea of donuts and CX and the bear and all these other random ideas, which we haven't talked about the bear at all, by the way.
Okay, let's open it up.
Where that all comes in my mind, the way my mind works. Like you said, there was the woman who went through this crazy journey, professional journey, and the points all make sense now, but they didn't make sense along the way.
Right.
I was like, nobody's gonna get where I'm going with this, but they do. And apparently there are people who think the same way that I do. So it's pretty cool.
Well, I think, all right, so let's talk about this. So on Donut Friday, you write a newsletter where you talk about your experience making donuts, lessons learned from watching the TV show was on FX or Hulu. What's Hulu? I think it's on
Hulu. Yep.
Hulu. It's called The Bear. So, if folks haven't watched The Bear, go watch The Bear. I think it's really, really well done. You never know what's going to happen. Great characters, great story, great
Yeah.
lessons. And you take donuts, what you learn from making donuts, the TV show The Bear, and then what it teaches you and the insights around customer experience. So, what is it about this television show, The Bear, that kind of spoke to you when you first saw it?
So, one is just somebody who came from the service industry. There were so many things about it that I connected with and felt so familiar. Um, like you said, the characters are just so well written. They're so rich and they're so multifaceted. So even if you have no idea of what it's like to work in a restaurant, the character development of the people and the arcs on the show
Yes, yes,
are enough to keep you there. It's almost like sometimes the food and the restaurant part is secondary to the storyline, especially this season. It's
yes.
very, very character driven. And so what I find coming from there is there are lots of things like, so again, if you don't know the show, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. If you know the show, you're going to know what I'm going to talk about. But season 2, episode 7, Forks, it's a
Oh,
Richie episode, right? Which
yes,
makes me cry every single time. But it was Richie finding his purpose.
100%.
You could, right? You could literally see it on his face when all of the pieces came together. And this was, again, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen the show, but this was a character who really struggled and suddenly he had found his purpose. What does that have to do with making donuts? Well, it was somebody took a chance on me and asked me to make donuts for them, and without realizing it, gave me a purpose. But when you talk about customer experience, you are supposed to have a purpose that your customer experience ladders up to so that your employees understand what kind of experience they're supposed to be delivering to their customers. Your purpose is a promise that you're making. So the purpose in this case,
Mhm.
purpose was the through line that I was able to find in all three. And so some weeks I'm able to find a through line between all three. Sometimes it's 2 out of the 3.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just one. Um but yeah, there's these lessons to be learned that are relevant, and it's just me taking all of those random data points and putting them together and creating a story out of it.
So these these lessons that you learn, they're from non-traditional places, right?
Mhm.
When you think when we're younger, we learn probably a few main ways, right? You learn at school, formal, right? You learn through social interactions with your peers, right? And then you probably learn through like entertainment and media, let's call it, right? And I think as we get older, we start to find these unique lessons in really interesting places, right? Observing somebody, waiting for a bus. My youngest is, 5. There's a TV show Bluey. There's great lessons in the show Bluey. There's great lessons in the show Bear. There's great lessons in music, right? There's great lessons, as you're going to a new restaurant and you just watch how things operate. And so I think one of the things I'm taking away from this conversation, I hope other people do, is keep your eyes open, keep your
Mhm.
ears open, keep your heart open, because experiences are out there. And whether you realize you're a part of them or not, you are, right? We're being played all the time. And being played doesn't have to be vindictive or bad. You can be
Right.
played in a really great way, right? Just as we talked about, is you curated these donuts and you created this experience for the people that went and got the donuts and were able to purchase it and be so happy. That's really intentional. They are receiving the outcome of your work to create a great experience. And so I think the big takeaway here is for people that are listening, think about your work. What is the experience you want people to have with your work when they say, oh man, I bought that thing, or I consulted with this person, or I worked with this person, I went to a meeting with this person? What is
Yeah.
that experience like? But also be open for new inspiration wherever it may be, whether it's on Hulu's The Bear, whether it's at your local donut bakery shop in upstate New York. Is it upstate?
No,
Oh,
no,
dude, you said it's like
sorry.
50 miles north of the city. No?
50 miles north of the city is not
It's not
considered
upstate.
upstate.
What?
No, no, I get so mad at that. Anybody from
What?
Westchester County gets mad at that.
Hold on. I'm bringing up a map. New York. How big is New York? I don't know these things. Hold
New
on.
York is very large. And there's even debate among New Yorkers about, okay, what really is upstate versus not. Because people from Westchester will say, okay, once you start to hit the Catskill Mountains, that's upstate. And people from like Ulster County, the Catskill area, will be like, no, 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 not even close. There's still so much more of the state to go that's really upstate.
Oh, wait. That's Connecticut I'm in. Albany. Is Albany upstate?
Albany's upstate.
And then are you off of that 84, 94? What is that?
I'm off of 684.
Okay, Poughkeepsie. Are you north or south of Poughkeepsie?
South of Poughkeepsie.
Okay, you're not upstate. Okay.
Poughkeepsie is still not upstate.
Wow. What's the name of the place you're at? What's the biggest place around here?
Katona. I'm north of White Plains.
Oh, I see White Plains.
I'm north of White Plains.
Pleasantville, Katona. Oh, Katona. Yeah, I see it right there.
Yeah.
It's like in nature. Let me turn on the layers. Oh, yeah. Oh, dude. Okay. Yeah, I see.
So,
My apologies for saying it was upstate. It's not clarity. What is it? A redaction? A reduction? Retraction?
You're retracting your statement. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hundreds of thousands of Westchester residents, thank you.
I'm gonna get hate mail now. So again, people, be alert for the experiences you're part of. Be alert for the experiences you're creating. And Beth, as we wrap it up, what do you want people to do after listening to this podcast? Is there something they should go? Do you want them to sign up for Donut Friday? What should people do?
Yeah, I would love it if you would check out Donut Friday on LinkedIn. It's called It's Donut Friday. And it's my newsletter. And so if you could subscribe and share, and I'm actually really curious. I really love reading the comments. I'm really curious to hear what other people's stories are. And if my through line connects, and if you've got a story, I'd love to hear it. And so one of the other things I do at the end of my newsletter every week is, if you are within 50 miles of New York City, let's meet in real life. And I will bring the donuts.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to be in Boston next month. That's not 50 miles, I don't think.
Nope.
Sorry.
You got to come to New York.
I'll hit you up next time I'm in New York. Beth, thank you so much for making the time. I'm so happy we met online. The donuts brought us in. The donuts brought us together. We've now curated an experience that lots of people are going to listen to. Thank you so much, Beth. Be well.
You too.